The first time I saw her, it wasn't in the glow of the starlight or the chrome halls of the research station. No, it was in the shadow of a dying moon, where the surface shimmered like cracked glass beneath the weight of two suns. I had been sent to survey a newly discovered system, the kind of assignment that promised nothing but silence, isolation, and a paycheck hefty enough to justify months away from Earth. And then I saw her. She stood at the edge of a crater, her silhouette outlined against the violet haze of the atmosphere. Her eyes, caught me first. They were impossibly large, luminous, with a hue I couldn't name. Not blue, not green, not any shade I'd ever cataloged. They seemed to hold stars within them, ancient light from galaxies I hadn't even begun to chart. I almost forgot to breathe. "She's beautiful," I muttered to myself, the words almost tasting like a confession. That's when she turned toward me. I don't know if she had been aware of my presence before, but now, with a tilt of her head, she studied me. Not with curiosity, exactly. There was something sharper in her gaze, like a scientist scrutinizing a specimen, and yet beneath it, a thread of amusement, or perhaps recognition. "You noticed my eyes," she said. The sound was melodic, but each syllable carried a vibration that made my chest ache. I swallowed hard. Yes, I admitted, suddenly self-conscious. "They're incredible." A smile, slow and deliberate, crept across her face. "Many have said that." Her voice carried a warning, though, as if the compliment was a test, and I wasn't sure whether I'd passed. "Few understand what they really mean." I blinked. "And what do they mean?" Her smile widened, and she took a step closer, her movement fluid, as though gravity itself obeyed her will. "They mean I can see you. All of you." That was when the air shifted. A subtle distortion, like the faint shimmer above a heated surface. I felt it before I saw it. A pressure in my chest, a whisper in my bones. Something dangerous lingered in her presence. Something alive and intelligent. I'm Lieutenant Caleb Rourke," I said, instinctively extending a hand. She didn't take it. Instead, she tilted her head and examined me from head to toe, eyes narrowing slightly. "I know who you are," she said. "I've been waiting for you." And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just looking at a stranger. I was standing before a predator, or something far worse. Her name, she finally told me, was Celera. She belonged to an alien species that had remained hidden for centuries, observing civilizations, shaping events, influencing the rise and fall of stars without leaving a trace. Hers was a race that thrived on exchange. Not currency, not diplomacy, but life itself. Not blood. At first. Not yet. Something subtler, far more dangerous. "You humans think you barter with objects, with money, with weapons," she said, her eyes never leaving mine. "We barter with possibilities. With risk. With choice." I tried to digest her words, but my training failed me. My mind had cataloged alien species, written protocols, memorized countless interactions, but none of it prepared me for her. She wasn't simply intelligent. She was aware, omniscient almost, and I was, by comparison, a speck of fragile flesh. "I don't understand," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. She laughed softly, a sound like wind over crystal dunes. "You will." And then she offered me something that would change my life forever. It started innocuously. A simple experiment, she said, to test compatibility. I was hesitant, of course. Humans are cautious creatures, particularly when faced with entities that could end life with a glance. But curiosity, as it often does, won over caution. "You will experience what you cannot see," she explained. "And in return, you will offer me trust." I agreed. The procedure was nothing like I had imagined. There were no needles, no invasive tools, no biotic scanners. Celera simply extended a hand, and I felt a warmth, a pulse, as if the very molecules around her had synchronized with mine. And then she looked into my eyes, deeper than I'd ever gone into my own mind. Visions came flooding in. Memories, not my own but stitched together with mine. A child wandering a desert planet under twin suns, a starship burning in orbit above a dying moon, laughter echoing across centuries I hadn't lived. I realized with a jolt that she was sharing experiences across species, across time. And in return I felt her learning mine. I gasped and pulled back, overwhelmed. This is insane. Insane, she whispered. Her gaze was not cruel, but intense. It is the foundation of survival. I offered you knowledge, Caleb. Knowledge is power. And power, she paused, eyes glinting, is dangerous. And that's when I understood the first lesson of her eyes. Everything beautiful comes with a price. Over the next few days, we walked the surface of the moon together, and I learned more than I had in a lifetime of study. Celera taught me the language of stars, the mathematics of life itself, the intricacies of energy that could reshape planets. But each lesson carried risk. Each glance from her seemed to probe my soul, teasing out desires and fears I had buried even for myself. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run. And yet I couldn't. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the craters in molten gold and violet, Celera stopped beside a canyon rim. She turned to me, expression unreadable. You are learning quickly, she said. But knowledge alone is not enough. Do you know why I offered you this? I don't, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. She stepped closer, and I felt that same pulse again, the subtle distortion that made the air vibrate around us. Because I can sense potential. In you, Caleb. Potential to change things. To survive where others fail. But potential is dangerous. Especially in those who do not understand its weight. I swallowed hard. And if I fail? Her smile was patient, almost tender, but her eyes were as sharp as blades. Failure is not an option. Not for you. Not for me. Then she leaned in, closer than any human had ever dared, and whispered, There is one final lesson. The final lesson was fear. Pure, unfiltered, existential fear. Celera opened a portal, or a window, into a reality where our system had collapsed. Entire colonies obliterated, civilizations annihilated by the very forces I had spent my life studying. I saw my own ship burning in orbit, my colleagues screaming in a void I could not touch. And in the center of it all, Celera. Not malevolent, not cruel, but watching, learning. You see, Caleb, she said softly, to survive is to understand the stakes. To know what you could lose, you must first face it. This is the dangerous gift I offer. Choice. Choice. That word resonated in me. She wasn't just testing me. She was offering me the ultimate exchange, knowledge, power, and a chance to confront my deepest fears for the cost of my absolute obedience. I stumbled back, overwhelmed. This is too much. She raised a hand, and the visions receded. The world snapped back into the quiet twilight of the moon. I was on my knees, shaking but alive. Too much, she murmured, tilting her head amused. No, not too much. Enough. You are ready. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and subtle instruction. I learned to harness energy in ways that defied physics, to manipulate matter with thought, to see the invisible threads that connected all life. And through it all, Celera's eyes followed me, teaching, testing, always pushing. And yet, despite the danger, I found myself drawn to her. Not just her beauty, which was undeniable, but the danger itself. The risk. The promise of something beyond the mundane, the mortal. She was the storm, and I was the moth, irresistibly drawn. Then came the mission that would define us both. A rogue fleet, remnants of a war I had only read about in historical archives, had invaded the system. Their technology was crude, but devastating, capable of wiping out orbital colonies with ease. The Council back on Earth had no solution. Their weapons were outdated. Their fleets insufficient. Celera turned to me, calm as ever. You will lead them to defeat. Not with brute force, but with what I've given you. I hesitated. Me? Lead an entire fleet? That's impossible. Impossible, she repeated, eyes blazing with a light that made stars pale. Nothing is impossible to those who understand the cost of survival. Do you understand, Caleb? I nodded, feeling the weight of her gaze, feeling every lesson, every risk, every vision she had shared. The knowledge, the danger, the choice, it was all mine now to wield. We ascended to the command deck of the orbital station. I felt her presence behind me, guiding, sharpening, whispering. And as the fleet engaged, I realized the truth Celera had always known. Humanity is dangerous not because of what it can destroy, but because of what it can endure. Through her guidance, through her dangerous gift, we turned the battle. Ships fell, systems malfunctioned, and the rogue fleet scattered like leaves in a storm. By the time the Council communicated their astonishment, the victory was complete. And yet, I knew, none of it would have been possible without her. Without the knowledge she had risked sharing, without the danger she had thrust upon me. After the battle, we stood on the observation deck, looking down at the newly secured system. The stars reflected in her eyes, and I finally understood the truth. You offered me something dangerous, I said softly. And you accepted it, she replied, voice calm, almost gentle. Yes, I said. And I survived. She tilted her head, a slow, deliberate motion. Survival is only the beginning. Now, you must choose what to do with it. Knowledge without action is meaningless. Power without guidance is chaos. I looked at her, the alien who had become my mentor, my challenge, my danger, and I knew there was only one choice I could make. I will follow, I said, wherever this leads, whatever risk it brings. Her smile was radiant, almost human, almost dangerous. Then we begin, she said. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Humanity's greatest strength is not its technology, its fleets, or its weapons. It is its willingness to risk, to endure, and to survive against odds that seem insurmountable. And with Celera at my side, I was more than human. I was something far more dangerous. Something capable of reshaping the stars themselves. The twin suns set, casting violet and gold across the crater. I felt the pulse of the universe in my veins, the weight of knowledge, and the thrill of danger. Celera's eyes met mine, and I knew that the gift she offered, the dangerous, terrifying, magnificent gift, was not just survival. It was evolution, and we were only beginning. The transformation did not happen all at once. That was the first mercy Celera ever gave me. In the days that followed the battle, my body struggled to reconcile what my mind now understood. Human neural limits were not designed to hold stellar mathematics, probability lattices, and the living maps of future outcomes. I collapsed twice. Once on the command deck. Once alone, staring at my reflection, wondering where the man named Caleb Rourke ended and whatever I was becoming began. Celera never intervened unless it was necessary. You are adapting, she told me, watching silently as med drones worked over my trembling hands. Your species is remarkably resilient. Resilient, I rasped. I feel like I'm breaking apart. She crouched beside me then, her eyes softer than I had ever seen them. Breaking is how new structures form. That was when I finally understood the true danger of her gift. She had not given me power. She had given me capacity. The Council of Earth demanded answers. They always do. When I stood before them, projected across 12 systems, representatives flickering in uneasy silence, I felt their fear before they spoke. Humans are perceptive creatures. They could sense the difference in me even if they couldn't define it. You neutralized a fleet we could not stop, the chairwoman said carefully. Without authorization. Without losses. Explain. I met their gaze, unflinching. We didn't overpower them, I said. We outlasted them. Outthought them. We survived long enough to learn their weaknesses. That doesn't answer how, another counselor snapped. I allowed myself a small smile. That, I said, is the part you're not ready to hear yet. Silence followed. Heavy. Uneasy. Celera watched from the shadows of the chamber, unseen by all but me. She did not interfere. This was my test, not of obedience, but of leadership. Finally, the chairwoman spoke again. What are you proposing, Lieutenant? I straightened. Humanity stops reacting, I said. We stop begging the galaxy to tolerate us. We stop pretending survival is enough. We become students of risk, of adaptation, of controlled danger. Some faces hardened, others lit with reluctant understanding. And if this path destroys us? Someone asked. I thought of Solara's eyes, of the visions she had shown me, of civilizations that had clung to safety until safety failed them. Then we will have earned our extinction, I said calmly. But if we survive, really survive, then nothing in this galaxy will ever underestimate us again. The council recessed for 6 hours. When they returned, Earth had changed. Celera met me at the edge of the station, where the stars curved like a living ocean. They accepted, she said. They're afraid, I corrected. But they accepted. She studied me, something unreadable behind her gaze. You have crossed the threshold, Caleb. There is no returning to what you were. I know. A pause. Do you regret it? I thought of the man I had been. A surveyor. A cog. Safe. Small. No, I said. But I want to know something. She inclined her head. Was this always your plan? I asked. To shape humanity into something dangerous enough to matter? For the first time, Celera hesitated. My species has watched the galaxy burn itself into ash, she said slowly. We do not conquer. We do not rule. We select. We invest in those who can endure what others cannot. And if I had failed, I asked, then your species would have remained irrelevant. The honesty was brutal. I laughed softly. That's the most dangerous thing you've said yet. Her lips curved. And yet, you are still here. Yes, I said, meeting her gaze. But now comes my choice. She stiffened just slightly. I don't belong to you, I continued. Not as a subject. Not as a weapon. Whatever I'm becoming, it serves humanity first. The silence stretched. Then Celera smiled. Wide, fierce, and utterly unafraid. Good, she said. I would have been disappointed otherwise. Years passed. Humanity changed. Not overnight. Not cleanly. But undeniably. We learned to coexist with uncertainty. To design ships that adapted mid-flight. To train minds instead of merely bodies. To embrace calculated risk instead of hiding behind treaties that only worked until they didn't. Other species noticed. Some feared us. Some sought alliances. A few tried to test us. They did not make that mistake twice. Through it all, Celera remained, sometimes beside me, sometimes watching from distances measured in light years. Never controlling, never retreating. One day, standing beneath a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations, I finally asked her the question that had haunted me since the beginning. "What did you offer me that day?" I asked. "Really?" She turned, her eyes reflecting galaxies in motion. "Evolution," she said, "but not the kind written in genes." "And what did it cost you?" I asked quietly. She looked at me then, not as a specimen, not as a student, but as an equal.
"Hope," she said.
"Hope that I was wrong about your kind." I took her hand. "You weren't," I said. "But you underestimated us." Her grip tightened, strong, real, alive. "Yes," she admitted. "I did." They would tell stories about us one day. About the human who looked into an alien's eyes and did not look away. About the woman who offered danger instead of safety. About the moment humanity stopped asking to survive and started daring the universe to try and stop us. And somewhere among the stars, Celera and I would watch a new generation rise, fearful, reckless, brilliant, and alive. Dangerous. Just as we were meant to be.